Welcome to the review part of lectures 15 to 21. This is the third phase of the review chapter we are doing. Now, this is lecture number 31 of the course Linguistics 2, English 504. Now, let's see what we did in these lectures. You see on the first slide, you see a diagram which talks something about the phrase structure, lexical component, deep structure, transformations, surface structure, morphophonemic rules, and sentence. Now here we see something about the structure of language, and you can see the three different types of structures. You can see the phrase structure, the lexical, the deep structure, then the transformations and the surface structure, and finally you get a sentence. So this gives us a bit of indication how we arrive at the finished product of language, how we arrived at the latest part, or how we arrive at the highest part like a sentence. We see that there is a phrase structure first of all, and then the lexical component passing through the lexical component, and then the deep structures are there, which are in fact which contain the original meaning of the sentence, original meaning of the of the phrase, or the actual meaning or actual concept of what is to be said later. Then through transformations you get a surface structure. Now surface structure is basically the top structure, which may not mean the same as the deep structure, and from surface structure finally we get a sentence. Now sentence, this means that behind a sentence there is a deep structure as well. Now let's see three generative grammars. This is the title that we took up while doing the area of language structure. Finite straight grammars are less powerful than phrase structure grammars, and phrase structure grammars are less powerful than the transformation grammars. So what does this prove? This means that there are three grammars being discussed in this lesson: the finite straight grammars, the phrase structure grammar, and the transformation grammars. And we see that the finite straight grammars are less powerful, they are the least powerful, and then over that you have the phrase structure grammar, which have more strength, and finally you have the transformation grammars, which have the maximum strength. So some grammars are weak, whereas some other grammars are strong, and they may have some structures which are not present in the other grammars, or they may not have some structures which are present in other grammars. Now finite straight grammars, we first of all looked at this kind of grammar. A finite set of rules operates upon a finite vocabulary and is capable of generating an infinite set of sentences. A very simple definition about the set of rules: a finite, limited set of rules that operates upon a finite vocabulary. The rules are applied to limited vocabulary, but look what happens after that: capable of generating an infinite set of sentences. So just by making choices, as we did in the last lecture, we talked about the fabric of language, and we said that on the horizontal axis we just on the vertical axis we select the right words, and on the horizontal axis we arrange them in the right order, and we get so many sentences just by selection and arrangement processes. Now the same thing applies here, that you have just finite set of rules and you have finite vocabulary, but you arrange it like that. You take different choices and you take different arrangements, and finally you get millions and millions of sentences. You get infinite set of sentences. So this is the finite state grammar. The finite state grammars, they are basically a set of rules in these structures, or in this process. Limited rules, they are applied on limited number of words, and you get unlimited number of structures or number of sentences. Now function of phrase state grammar, what happens after that? The next grammar was the phrase state grammar. What does this do? This generates strings of symbols and to assign to each a labeled bracketing. Now what happens once a phrase comes, and after that you apply the phrase structure grammar? And phrase structure, what it does, it puts labeling, it labels, and it puts brackets around each element, around each part of a sentence. It puts brackets and it singles out the nouns and verbs and prepositions and whatever elements are present, whatever parts of speech are present in that phrase, it singles out and then gives us an arrangement which is phrased, which is helpful to us to further extend that phrase and make a sentence. So what happens in phrase-straight grammars? It's basically, it generates strings of some symbols and assigns to each string a labeled bracketing. It puts brackets around each element in a phrase. Transformational grammar talks about form and meaning both. But now the third type, transformational grammar, which is the most powerful one. What does it do? It basically talks about the form and the meaning, the structure and meaning both. So both these important elements, they come into picture here in transformational grammar. So this means that only structure is not important here, but also the meaning is important. The object is to generate a structured sentence, a proper structured sentence, a grammatical structured sentence, and which also has a meaning, a proper meaning, which is meaningful. It analyzes the sentences, divides them into parts, demonstrates functions of various parts, and rearranges them. Look what it does. It analyzes the sentences. It divides them into different parts, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, articles, and then it demonstrates function of various parts. It also gives us the function of various parts or the role each part is playing in a sentence, and then finally rearranges them to form meaningful sentence. So this is what is the role of transformational grammar, which is the most powerful here in these three grammars. TG, transformation grammar, we will refer to it as TG. TG consists of two levels of representation of a sentence, deep and surface. Now, when we were talking about the diagram right in the first slide, now here is the reference that there are two structures, two meanings. One is a deep meaning and the other is a surface meaning. So transformation grammar basically consists of two levels of representation. It represents a sentence at on two levels. The first level is that of a deep structured meaning, which is the underlying meaning of a sentence, and the other one is the surface meaning, which is at the top, which is apparent, which you can straight away make out, which is visible structure or visible meaning. But then deep inside, behind that, there is a deep meaning. Surface structures are derived from deep structures. Now from the deep structure you come and you get a surface structure at the top. So surface structures are derived out of the deep structures, or the surface meaning is basically derived from the deep meaning. The rules in TG do not tell us how to produce language, but they tell us the order in which to put words and phrases. So here, what are these rules? What do they tell us? What is their role? They don't tell us the way. They don't tell us the rules how to produce language. So here, TG doesn't talk about the rules, but it tells about the order in which to put the words and phrases. How to produce language, it talks only about, it tells us the order, the arrangement. So the focus here is on the arrangement. How to put words and phrases in order to produce meaningful sentences. The rules, they don't tell us how to produce language, they tell us the order in which the arrangement is done, the order in which the words and phrases are put. Now, common transformations. Let's talk about some of the common transformations, how we transform sentences to give meanings. The passive agent deletion, this was the first one we studied. Passive agent deletion means that sometimes in passive voice people are not interested in the action doer, or you don't want to put the action doer or the subject. What do? We fit an indefinite pronoun to fill in the gap when the subject is not given. Now here, for example, the job was done. Now sometimes people are not interested in the action doer who did the job. So, but when you have to change it into active voice, when you want to put action into that, and you want to show that somebody did the job, so what do? You introduce a subject here. Ahmed did the job. Who gave the decision? The judge gave the decision. right? So you introduce the subject, you fit in an indefinite pronoun sometimes, you put he did the job, you put she did the job. So here when you want to change a passive voice structure into an active voice structure, and the passive voice is such that there is no subject given there, the job was done or the decision was taken, so here you don't have the subject. Who took the decision? We don't know. So once we change them into active voice, we make a transformation and we introduce a pronoun. We may introduce he or I or we or you, or we may even go for a noun. We may put the relevant noun according to the context, like the judge made the decision. So this is how you make a transformation, by introducing a subject in passive, when in passive voice, passive voice is to be changed into active voice. Extraposition, another kind of transformation. Subject moved at the end and a dummy it is put in the initial position. It has a grammatical meaning but no lexical meaning. Now here sometimes you move the subject and you put an it, a dummy it in the start. And what does that mean? You are just giving it a grammatical structure. You are just introducing a passive agent, a dummy it, just to give it a grammatical meaning, just to correct the grammar, but it doesn't have any lexical meaning. It is done, right? You just introducing an it. Subject is moved at the end. It is done by the boy. It is done by the boy. So here you are introducing a dummy it. It is nice. When you talk about the weather, it is a nice weather, or it is raining. So here the rain, the phenomena of rain is to be explained. So the rain is moved at the end and you introduce a dummy it. It doesn't mean, it here doesn't mean anything. It here doesn't have any lexical meaning, but it has a grammatical meaning. It has a grammatical identity, but it doesn't have any lexical identity, because it doesn't give any special meaning to the sentence. You've just introduced it to talk and to complete the sentence grammatically, and just to give it a grammatical perfection. So sometimes it's an extraposition. In extraposition, you move the subject at the end and you put a dummy it in the start, just to give it a grammatical completion. And focus, the next area, next transformation which we studied. The old piece is put in the start and the most important information is put at the end. So here sometimes the old part, the information which already is known to people, is put in the start. Quaid-e-Azam. And when you want to give information about Quaid-e-Azam, was born in Karachi, no, here the important information is put at the end. So you have shifted the end focus. It's called the end focus. You have shifted the focus to the end. The focus to the end. So a focus is put on the new information, the most important information. Here in Quaid-e-Azam was born in Karachi, new information is basically Karachi. You are trying to give some information about Quaid-e-Azam. So Quaid-e-Azam is the old information which everybody knows. But when you want to shift the focus, you put at the end. When you want to put focus in a part of sentence, you want to give some new information, so you change the end focus. You transform the sentence. Quaid-e-Azam was born in Karachi. Now here Karachi is a new information. So that new information is put at the end of the sentence. And focus in genitives. Choice between S genitive and O genitive. What are genitives? The apostrophes. Like you say, Ahmed's job is excellent. Ali's books are lost. Or the books, we can say it the other way around, books of Ali are lost. Now how to decide whether to put an S genitive or to put O genitive, like of, the books of Ali. So how to decide that? More important is put at the end. So here, where you want to put focus, more important among the two, you put at the end. Legs of the chair. Chair is important, you put at the end. Legs of the chair. Here the chair is important, you put at the end. Ahmad's friend. Friend is more important. Ahmad is already known. Friend is more important. So you put it at the end. Ahmad's friend. So Ahmad's apostrophe S you put in the start. So here most important thing is the focus. Most important thing is the value of a word in a sentence. Which is new information, which is more important, you put at the end, and that is how you decide between the S genitive and O genitive. Reversed WH clefts. WH cleft is put at a regular position. WH cleft is reversed. Now here, sometimes you make a transformation where you change the cleft, you change the WH structure. You put at regular position in one sentence, where are you going? But in some sentences, you just reverse it, you put WH at the end, and this is how you sometimes shift the focus. Where you want to put the focus, sometimes you need to put focus on a different part of sentence, so you reverse the WH cleft and you put WH at the end. And in the regular position, you put it in the start. Sentence transformations. Grammatically correct but meaningless. Now what does this mean? This means that sometimes you have grammatically correct sentences but they are meaningless. It has all the requirements of a perfect grammatically correct sentence, but it doesn't have any specific meaning, it doesn't have any clear meaning. We had that very famous sentence, if you remember, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now it's a grammatically correct sentence but doesn't have any clear meaning. There could be some abstract meaning behind, but it doesn't have a very clear meaning where you can really understand what it means. So sentence transformations, in sentence transformations we make sure that it's not only the grammar that is to be correct, but also a meaning is to come out. It's also the meaning that is important, and not only the grammar. So you may have many grammatical sentences, correct sentences, but they don't have any meaning. But on the other hand, again, you can have some sentences which are somewhat clear, and you can make some ideas out of them, but they may be grammatically incorrect. So again, those sentences are not perfect sentences. You can't call them perfect sentences, because if they don't obey the rules of grammar, if they are not structurally correct, again the problem is that such sentences can't be used. But you may be able to make out some approximate meaning out of those sentences. So it's like both the things have to be catered for, and both the things have to be looked at, the grammar plus the meaning, the grammar and the context. The correct meaning, something should come out of that sentence, and it should be grammatically correct. So in this transformation you have to look at both the things. Chomsky cleared the generative grammar models only the knowledge that underlies the human ability to speak and understand. Now Chomsky, the man who really talked about the inside grammar, the universal grammar or inside skill or ability of human beings to produce language. Here he says that generative grammar models only the knowledge that underlies the human ability to speak and understand. What is generative grammar? Generative, the grammar that generates. So generative skills are there. Chomsky says that it basically talks only about the knowledge which is present inside the mind of a person, the knowledge which is underlying the surface structures, which is deep inside the brain, and the knowledge which could be called as a skill of human beings to acquire language, to process language, to generate language. So that is the human ability, and all the knowledge that you see in the generative grammar is basically, it has a link with the ability, human ability to speak and understand language. Internal language, I language, is the mentally represented linguistic knowledge that a native speaker of a language has, and is therefore a mental object. From this perspective, most of the theoretical linguistics is a branch of psychology. And external knowledge, we talk about it on the next slide, but first look at the final words here about the internal language. I language is the mentally represented linguistic knowledge. The internal knowledge is the one which is mentally represented, which talks about the inner ability, which talks about the mental ability, mental faculty, where a person acquires language, processes it in the brain, and then generates. So here, I language is mentally represented. It is the mentally represented linguistic knowledge that a native speaker of language has. It's the knowledge which is coming from the mind, which is coming from the brain. Whereas from the perspective, most of the theoretical linguistics is a branch of psychology. So what is he saying? What is linguistics? It is basically a branch of psychology, because in psycholinguistics we again study about the mental processes, and he's trying to link this philosophy to the internal abilities to speak. He's trying to link this philosophy to the philosophy of linguists, where when they say that it's a branch of psychology, to the philosophy that there's a link between the psychology and linguistics. Linguistics, when you analyze a language, you analyze a language that is coming from their brains, so that is internal language, or that is a language which belongs to the brain, which belongs to the outside, which belongs to the inside of a brain or inside of a human being. External knowledge. External knowledge encompasses all other notions of what a language is. For example, if that it is a body of knowledge or behavioral habits shared by community. External is outside man, could be social linguistics, dealing with the language of society. So external knowledge or external language encompasses all other notions of what a language is. It talks about, encompasses, it's in addition to all the notions what a language is. For example, that it's a body of knowledge or behavioral habits shared by community. You can call it a body of knowledge or behavioral habits shared by community, whatever behavioral habits, what behavior the community has towards language. So external language encompasses all other knowledge, all other notions of what a language is. For example, that it's a body of knowledge or behavioral habits shared by community. Structuralism, the new branch of linguistics that we studied, study of language in terms of observable and verifiable data obtained from the behavior of language users. Here you are talking in imperial terms. Here you are talking about collection of data and looking at the facts and figures. So study of language in terms of observable and verifiable data. The data which comes from people, and it can be verified later. So you call it empirical style, where you are collecting data and you're using it later to find out the results. This is a new movement, reaction against the traditional and universal grammar. Okay, now universal grammar, we just did it, we remember. They talk about the internal ability of man to produce language. Here they say that it's obtained from, it's the new movement, and it's a reaction against the traditional and universal grammar. It studies a language employing certain procedures which linguists have formulated, tested and improved. How does it study language? It studies language on the basis of the rules and regulations, on the procedures that the linguists have tested and improved. So here you are basically, structuralism is related or is linked with the ideas, with different ideas, where the linguists which the linguists have formulated and improved. So it studies language employing certain procedures, right? They are talking against the traditional and universal grammar, and they say language is basically external feature. Man needs stimulus, man needs society, man needs gatherings to learn language. They don't believe on any inner habit or inner ability of a person to learn language. Now a structuralist treats grammar as a device by which words are combined into larger units of discourse. What is a structuralist doing? Structuralist is taking language or grammar just as a device by which the words are combined into larger units of discourse. The rules, the device, like a machine, part of a machine, right? And using that part, you are applying those rules, and you are arranging the words. You are combining words to form larger units of discourse. So that is a structuralist approach, or structuralist takes grammar as just from the aspect of structure, focuses mainly on the structure. Basic assumptions made here are of the priority of spoken language, objective treatment of all the languages, importance of synchronic description, linguistics, descriptive, not prescriptive, sentence, system structure, language and utterance. Different terms, different concepts which need to be understood by you people. Basic assumptions is that they give priority to the spoken. They say spoken came first and then the written. So they lay a lot of stress on the spoken English, and they say that those are the rules basically which tells us how the language is formed and how the arrangement of words is done. Importance of synchronic description. Importance of synchronic. Now what is synchronic? When you study language at that very period of time, without involving history or without involving the past or the future of this word, you take language as it is at that very time, and that is called basically importance of synchronic description. Diachronic, you talk about, trace the history of the language. You look at the development of history over the period of time, and you look at the shape of language in each period, and that is where you are basically talking about the historical linguistics. But here is the synchronic. Synchronic means you talk about language only at that period of time. It may be different in different periods, but you're not taking the past or the future of the word or the language. You are just taking the language as it is, as it exists at that very period of time, and that is the synchronic description. So they lay a lot of importance, they give a lot of importance to the synchronic description. Now linguistics is descriptive, not prescriptive. You describe linguistics as it is, you don't prescribe it. It's like it doesn't have any written scripts. It's not prescriptive. It's not prescribed and taken always like that, but it's taken at that very period of time. You talk about the structure which you have at hand, which you have at the moment, which you have at that very period of time when you're making the analysis. System structure, language and utterance. We talk about this later. Now, structuralism. Strengths. What are the strengths of this theory? Chomsky says that the major contribution of structural linguists is methodological rather than substantive. You talk more about the method, how it is done. You talk about the ways to form language structures. You don't talk about the methods, you talk about the ways, and you don't talk about the structure. You don't talk about the actual structure is methodological. You see how the major contribution is that that language is taken in methodological form rather than substantive. It made study of language scientific, precise, verifiable and objective. Look at these four difficult, complex terms, but four very familiar terms: scientific, precise, verifiable and objective. Now, scientific, because it has a complex structure and there are rules at every stage. Precise, you talk about, it made the study of language, you can easily study language if you talk only about the structures. Verifiable and objective, of course, these are the two areas where you verify, you get the data, you verify for the correctness, and there you get the qualities, four qualities of language, and this is the criteria given by structuralism. Or It has made the study of language very scientific, precise, verifiable and objective. It has facilitated the language experts, facilitated the linguists who are trying to study the language, and they are trying to get the data, and a data which can be verified and data which is objective. It examines all languages in terms of their phonological and grammatical system. Structuralism talks about the phonology, the sounds, and the grammar. So basically, structuralism is related with just structure. It talks about the structure, the apparent structure that is there. It recognizes uniqueness of each language, and it talks about the unique features of each language, whatever is present, whatever unique is present in each language, or whatever visible is present in each language. Talks about the structure, talks about the visible structure, talks about the visible meaning or the surface meaning. Weakness of structural linguistics, functionalism. This is what we studied next. We talked a little about the weaknesses of structural linguistics, and then we took up a new study which was functionalism. The Prague school rejected Saussurian distinction of synchronic and diachronic linguistics and homogeneity of language system. What did Prague school say? They criticized Saussurian's idea, they criticized Saussurian's distinction of synchronic and diachronic. They said that this idea of studying the language in synchronic approach and the diachronic approach, they rejected this idea, and they said that language is not homogeneous, language is heterogeneous, language can vary, there are variations in language. You can't call all the languages as one language, or you can't call the system of language as a homogeneous. It is basically, it doesn't believe on synchronic and diachronic approach, and they gave their own approach. They said that basically you talk about the function, you talk about the function of language. Functionalism, the next study that we took up, functionalists emphasized on the multifunctionality of language and the importance of its expressive, social and cognitive functions, along with its descriptive function. So here, what is this new philosophy? Functionalism. Functionalists, they emphasize on the multifunctionality of language, that language has so many functions, every word has so many functions, and the importance of its expressive, social and cognitive functions along with its descriptive function. It is not only descriptive. Language cannot just be described, or language just doesn't express. It is basically the important expressive, social and cognitive functions along with descriptive function. It doesn't only describe, but it is very expressive. You can express your thoughts, your views. It's very social. In language you have the social interactions, you learn new things, you give new things to other people, and cognitive functions, the meaning is also there. The cognates or the resembling sounds or resembling words are also there. So they function along with descriptive functions, along with the actual descriptive function. Functionalism in linguistics emphasize instrumental character of language. What is instrumental? It's a machine, device. So functionalists, they said that language is basically instrumental. Language is scientific. Language is, you just talk about the function, what role language plays on in particular context and on special occasions. It's just like the way to be familiar, the way to the functionalism in linguistics emphasizes the instrumental character. This means that how language is, or the words are familiar, they are used in familiar settings. So it's like a part of a machine. It's like a machine. Functionalists emphasize the multifunctionality of language and the importance of its expressive, social and cognitive functions, along with the descriptive. So it's not only just descriptive function, but you have other features also, like it should be expressive, it should be social, it should be cognitive and that is what language is. Language is basically, you can't restrict language to one area or one place or one human being, but you can, languages have to expand, and that is how they take words from other languages and they give words to the other languages. Now, functionalism in linguistics emphasizes the instrumental character of language. Functionalists maintain that the structure of national languages is determined by several independent semiotic functions: expressive, descriptive, and social. Now here, functionalism in linguistics, it emphasizes the instrumental character of language. Functionalists maintain that the structure of national language is determined by the several independent semiotic functions. So you also look at the semiotic functions while you are dealing with the structure of national languages. Your language is either very expressive, it's descriptive, and also social. Some important semiotic functions are expressive, semiotic functions of language. Language is expressive, language is descriptive, and language is social. Furthermore, it says that structure of language system is partly, though not wholly, determined by functions. You can really assess the efficiency of something. You can really, structure of language is partly or not wholly determined by functions. You can assess the use of language. You can study the language through studying the functions of words. So it is a structure of language is partly, though not wholly, partly the words resemble, the structures resemble each other. So they also, it's determined by their functions, by their roles, what roles they are playing in sentences, what words are being used, or what roles are being played by the words in sentences and sentences in the paragraphs. So basically, functionalism talks about the function, talks about the rule, talks about the role the words are playing. Functionalism in linguistics emphasizes the instrumental character of language. Functionalists maintain that the structure of national language is determined by the several independent semiotic functions: expressive, descriptive, social. So, a long debate that functionalism in linguistics, what does it emphasize? It emphasizes the instrumental character of language. Functionalists maintain that the structure of national languages is determined by the several independent semiotic functions. You look at different semiotic functions. You analyze, maintain the structure of national language. You analyze the structure of national languages, and you assume that you are expressive, descriptive, and social. So such descriptions would be expressive, they would be descriptive, and they would be social. Furthermore, it says that structure of language system is partly, though not wholly, determined by functions. Pragmatics, another branch of linguistics that we took up, the study of how to do things with words. People use language to accomplish certain kinds of acts, broadly known as speech acts. Now, what are speech acts? Very important term which talk about the practical function of our speech, what we do, what we convey, how we convey our feelings, our views using different words, and they are called speech acts, the actions we do through speech. They are distinct from physical acts like drinking a glass of water, or mental acts like thinking about drinking a glass of water. They are distinct, they are different from the physical acts. You are doing actions through speech. You are basically performing your actions through speech. You have an objective behind uttering some sentences, and what are you doing? Basically, you are doing something. You are performing speech acts through speech. Now, for example, you have direct speech acts, indirect speech acts, and performative. Now, you can have so many sentences for assertion. When you want to assert, you use a sentence. You use a specific kind of sentence which shows that you are asserting. Ask, for asking question. Now, that is interrogative, asking questions. Again, a kind of speech act that you perform. Order, giving order. When you give order, you use certain specific words to give order. Promises, you make promises, you have special words for that. Threats, You give threats, you have special words for that. Warnings, again, you have special words for that. Every language has different words, and the speakers, the language users, they pick up certain words because those words would help them to perform speech acts. If they want to assert, they want to ask a question, they want to order, they want to give a promise, they want to give threats, and they want to talk about warnings. Here, these are different speech acts. The act of asserting, act of asking. Now you have different kinds of styles of language, or different words which you use in the sentences, which indicate that you are asking, you are ordering, are you promising, are you giving threat. These acts are performed through words. They are called the direct speech acts. But sometimes you have indirect speech acts where you give a different sentence, but in fact you mean the same sentence. Like you are basically somebody says Ahmad got A grade. No, the answer if you want to talk about the information Ahmad, you say Ahmad got A grade. But if you want to do the speech act of questioning, you say, did Ahmad get A grade? And the answer would be yes, he did. Yes, he did, or no, he didn't. No, that is one kind of speech act. But then sometimes you have indirect speech act, like, do you know Ahmad got A grade? No, here the person would definitely not reply to the question, not reply to the speech act, but would just, it would be inappropriate for the person to say, yes, I know. Do you know Ahmed got A grade? Yes, I know. Yes, I know here would be an inappropriate, unsuitable reply. It would sound a bit blunt. But here again, the reply would be, yes, he did, or no, he didn't. So indirect, sometimes you do some actions indirectly. You don't ask anybody directly. You don't use the direct words, but you use indirect speech acts. Performative. The words which give you a help in announcing what you are doing. So the words which express what action has been done, what action has been performed. I announce that there will be holiday tomorrow. I announce. No, word announce is basically performative here, because it is performing the action of announcing. You are using this word just to make it sound like announcement. I announce that nobody would come this side, on this side of the line. So announcement, making announcement, or giving maybe warning. I warn you. You use the word directly in the sentence to express what you want, and to make a speech act. So speech acts, you sometimes use also you use performatives for different kinds of speech acts as well. So in performatives, what happens? You just use that word in a sentence, and when you use it, basically that word indicates what you are doing, or that word indicates what action you want to convey. More speech acts to analyze task-oriented dialogues, like answer, accept, reject, and so forth. You have so many new speech acts now, like the speech act of answering, accepting. Yes, I would come to your party. Reject, I'm sorry, I regret I won't be able to attend your party. Answer, yes, he got A grade. So more speech acts are entering the domain of speech acts, the domain of performatives, or the domain of using language for a certain function. Cooperative speakers respect four maxims: the maximum of quality, maximum of quantity, the maximum of relevance, and the maximum of manner. Now the speakers, cooperative speakers, they respect these four maxims, and they say, yes, the maximum of quality is important, you can't compromise on quality. The maximum of quantity, they talk about the quantity. The maximum of relevance, that it has to be relevant to the context. And the maximum of manner, how you make it sound like formal and informal, how to arrange that. So cooperative speakers basically respect these four maxims. Pragmatics, contributions should be perspicuous. In particular, they should be orderly and brief. avoiding obscurity and ambiguity. Avoid any kind of confusion, avoid any kind of ambiguity. Whatever contributions you are making, whatever sentences you are making, they should not be confusing, they should not be unclear. They should be orderly, they should be concise, and they should be obscure, and they should not be obscure, and they should not have any ambiguity. Stylistics, another branch that we took up, a branch of applied linguistics concerned with the study of style in text, especially but not exclusively in literary works. So another branch which talks about the study of style in text, the study of literary writings, the study of literary writings, how the style, how to evaluate the style, what is the style, how it is being said. That is what is the branch of stylistics dealing with. In linguistic stylistics, we see that the description of literary text by modern methods derived from general linguistic theory using the categories of the description of language as a whole. Let's read these lines again. The description of literary text by methods derived from general linguistic theory using the categories of the description of language as a whole. That is the linguistic stylistics. You describe the literary text, you talk about the different features of literary text, and you take it as using the categories of description of the language as a whole. So while you are talking about language as a whole, you take up small chunks, you take up the small writings and you study them, and you get to know the description, you get to know about the structure of language. A comparison of each text by the same or by different authors in the same or in different genres. Again, what is stylistics? When you compare the texts, when you look at two different things and the similar things, they belong to the same genre, but when you look at them, you find out differences, and that is what is comes under stylistics. You talk about the particular specific style of Ghalib and Iqbal, you talk about the specific style of Keats and Shelley. So that is basically the comparison. It's done by sometimes you take the same, the two poets in the same genre, and you take up their different poems. And sometimes you take one speaker or one literary writer, and you analyze different genres or different works and different genres that he or she has done. So you are again comparing the text with the help of the features, with the help of the text produced. So comparison of each text by the same or by different authors. Sometimes the comparison has to be made between two writings coming from two different poets. So that is even more difficult. But here in stylistics is also a comparison of text by the same or by the different authors in the same or in the different genres. If you want to study novel, for example, so you take two different poets, two different fiction writers, and look at both of them, and you take out the features, the salient features of both of them, and then you can make comparison. A comparison of each text by the same or by different authors in the same or different genres. Technical speaking, stylistics is a study of linguistic features of a literary text, phonological, lexical, and syntactic. Another observation, the technical speaking, stylistics is a study of linguistic features of text. What are the linguistic features, linguistic characteristics of text? That is what is stylistics. The phonological features, the lexical features, the syntactic features related with different words, related with the different texts. These features are studied, and that is basically stylistics. Style as an embellishment, just ornamentation. Now, there are different aspects of analyzing a text, and even stylistics has 6 different aspects which are applied to study a text. The first one is the style as an embellishment, as a decoration, just ornamentation. Style is used just for ornamentation or just for embellishment. No particular specific words are used specifically for any purpose. Stylistics is just it's an analysis, and it's a code. The stylistics is as an embellishment, it's just an ornamentation. Style as choice between alternate expressions. You choose two different you have two different expressions, and you choose the right expression, or you make a right choice when you are composing sentences. So you look at which sentence would suit better, which sentence would be suitable according to the arrangement of sentence or according to the context. Style as a set of individual or collected characteristics. Another feature which talks about the style, and this is like assumption that style is a set of individual or collected characteristics. Every writer has a particular style, or a group of writers have different styles, or they may have the same features in common. So style, what is style? Is a set of individual, and secondly, style can also be a collected characteristics, a group of collected characteristics. Almost all writers have their individuality. Style as deviation from a norm. So it is said that when you change from the norm, you deviate from a norm, the existing norm, you are basically creating style. So another aspect, that style is a deviation from, whenever you deviate, you change the structure, you change the normal convention, you are creating a style. It becomes evident that it is difficult to separate style from context. It is difficult to separate style from context, because for every context you adopt a style. The writers, they employ different linguistic devices, different poetic devices, sometimes for poems, and different linguistic devices to change the style of different works. They would use different technique to write a tragic poem, and they would use a different technique to write a comic poem. So one author may have two different kinds of devices, or two different sets of devices, or two different techniques to talk about two different subjects, or to write two different poems or two different novels or plays. So almost all writers have their individuality. Style as deviation from norm. It becomes evident that it is difficult to separate style from text. No way to know what an accepted norm is. We don't know actually what an accepted norm is. If we say that style is a deviation from norm, then norm must be defined. Everybody should know, yes, this is the standard, this is a norm, and if we do go an inch right or left, we are creating style. But in fact, the norm hasn't been defined. Norms are not defined, because norms are likely to change with the changing generations and with the movement of people across societies. Norms are changed just because there is a movement. So with changing norms, you can't define one particular standard of norm or one particular shape of norm. So how can you say that you deviate from a norm and you make a style? So no way to know what an accepted norm is. Style as a set of those relations among linguistic entities that are stable in terms of wider spans of text than a sentence. So talking about those relations which are stable in terms of wider spans of text, you have long poems, and some of the features are repeated. They are consistent. So it becomes a consistency of style. It is easy to read that style if you have longer spans of text or longer writings. It's easy to identify the style, because then there would be consistency in the use of that style. But on the other hand, we say that even a sentence possesses style. It's not like only the large text or the long writings, they can have style, because there would be consistency and there would be repetition of linguistic devices. Even one sentence has a style. Even one sentence possesses a style. There is a particular way the sentence has been used, a sentence conveys something. So even a sentence has a style individually. Not to talk about the place of sentence in the text, or not to talk about the long text. And we can't say that only long texts, they help us in studying the style. Even one sentence would give us a hint of the style of the writer. Concept of spans, not so much stylistic as grammatical. Concept of spans, long spans, then there would be more check on grammar. There would be more more focus on grammar, how the text has been organized, how the text has been composed, how the sentences have been joined with each other. So more concentration would be of grammar rather than style. Style is the aggregate of frequencies because it is the result of more than one linguistic items. Style is not one item. Style is basically a combination of different items. Any satisfactory stylistic analysis would be a combination of all the 6 approaches. So once you are analyzing style, you're looking at all these 6 approaches together. You can't just take one approach and say that yes, this is style. All stylistic analysis is ultimately based on the matching of a text against a contextually related norm. So stylistic analysis is ultimately based on matching of a text against the contextually related norm. So you match the text with the norm, you match the text with the related norm, related context, and that is stylistic analysis. You can also, so you compare the text with the norm, you compare the text with the context. Contextually related norm, a norm which is related to the context. So you compare the work with the context and you are studying style. You are analyzing a text for style. Now, this was basically the discussion on the lectures from 15 to 21, and this we talked here about different branches, pragmatics, stylistics. We also talked about the different structures, how the language has structures, and how the styles, how to analyze the language, and how you analyze the different structures, and how you analyze language. And there are different theories, different branches that talk about the structure of grammar. We also talked about the contributions of different people towards the language and towards the transformations, how the writers, they transform the sentences, what were the different kinds of transformations, the different kinds of grammar, the finite state grammars, the phrase structure grammar, and we also talk about the transformational grammar. So how the smallest units, they are combined to make more larger sentences, and the sentences are joined to create the large texts. So these are different roles of different grammar. And then the transformational grammar, what assumptions are made, how different transformations, how you remove the subject and you introduce sometimes a dummy. So all that was related to the grammar, was related to the structures of language. And then we also talked about the structuralism, that what was the structuralist theory, that they focused only on the structural aspect. And then we talked about the functionalism, how language is used in different functions, how language is used to play different functions. And then we talked about the stylistics, the literary, how the language is used to assess literature. In the coming lecture, we'll be talking about the last part of this course, the last lectures that were related with the final area of this course, that is how the language finally, what was the final form of the language. So till the next class, where we'll be talking about the last few lectures and winding up this course, Linguistics 2 English 504. I would like to say goodbye tonight.